All right. So I just want to start by thanking everyone so much for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Erica Hammond, and I am an organizer with Climate Jobs Rhode Island. I'd like to thank all of the members of the General Assembly, elected officials, and staff who have all taken the time to be here and learn more about the Renewable Energy Standard and the legislation that has been introduced that would update this standard to 100% by 2030. So throughout this discussion, experts in the field will cover what the Renewable Energy Standard is, how it works, why it is needed, how updating it to 100% by 2030 will help Rhode Island create jobs and meet our Act on Climate goals affordably. And I'd also like to start by thanking all of my colleagues and partners who have also joined us today representing environmental organizations, working Rhode Islanders, and the renewable energy industry. So let me actually just go ahead and enable this wait room so I don't add everybody individually. All right, so I just want to give a quick introduction of the speakers who are going to be presenting today. So I'll start with Priscilla de la Cruz, who I know many of you probably know, who's the co-chair of Climate Jobs Rhode Island and also the Senior Director of Government Affairs at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. I'd also like to introduce Patrick Crowley, also co-chair of Climate Jobs Rhode Island and the Secretary Treasurer of the Rhode Island AFL-CIO. I know that both of you wear many, many hats, and those are only just a few of them, but thank you both. Also Kai Salem, who's the Policy Coordinator at Green Energy Consumers Alliance. Thank you, Kai. And I'm also want to introduce David Ortiz, who is the Head of Government Affairs and Market Strategies for the Northeast at Orsted, as well as Stacy Tingley, who is the Deputy Head of Government Affairs and Government Strategy Northeast at Orsted as well. And I'd also, lastly but not least, like to introduce Sean Burke, who is the Policy Manager at the Northeast Clean Energy Council. So thank you all so much for being here, and I will give you guys the opportunity to introduce yourselves a little bit more when each of you come up to speak. But for right now, I just want to kick it over to both the co-chairs of Climate Jobs Rhode Island, Priscilla de la Cruz and Patrick Crowley, to give a little more of an introduction.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Welcome. As Erica mentioned, I am the co-chair of Climate Jobs Rhode Island alongside Pat Crowley. I am also the president of the Environment Council of Rhode Island. And of course, my affiliation is with the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. So I will keep it very brief. I am excited for this discussion today on 100% renewable energy standard. And I just wanted to say that I am very pleased to see and to say that Climate Jobs shares another top priority with the Environment Council of Rhode Island, which is increasing the renewable energy standard to 100% by 2030. We collectively recognize that this is a critical step in addressing the climate crisis and codifying the state's commitment to 100% renewable electricity by 2030, both critical for the protection of our livelihoods and also for the environment. So with that said, I am just going to go ahead and pass it over to Pat Crowley so we can get on to the presentations shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. And, it's been an honor to serve as co-chair of Climate Jobs Rhode Island alongside of you. I'd like to thank the Representative Ruggiero, who's here today, who's one of the co-sponsors of the 100% Renewable Energy Standard in the House of Representatives, and especially welcome Chairperson David Bennett of the House Environmental Committee. I'd also like to send a special round of thanks to our partners at Climate Jobs National Resource Center, without whose support we probably wouldn't be here. It's really remarkable when you look at just the panelists that we have today. I mean, where else would you find the labor movement, the environmental movement, and representatives of industry all sitting together talking about the importance of renewable energy and the impact it can have on the Rhode Island economy? I can think of very few circumstances when a coalition that broad but that deep and solid has made a difference in the state. So, and I think it's a testament to the work of a lot of different organizations, most of whom are represented here. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm great, I'm in particular waiting to hear Kai's excellent explanation of this, because I think she does just a real fabulous job at explaining what could be the nuances of this bill, but the importance of it. So thank you for being here, and Erica, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you both. And I want to give, just before we jump into these presentations, Representative Ruggiero, I want to give you an opportunity. I hate to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to say anything, this is your really important piece of legislation. So I want to give you that opportunity now.
Well, thank you, Erica, and thank you, Pat, and thanks to all of the advocates here who've worked so hard on this. It's a team sport. No one person ever does anything in the legislature. It takes a lot of great minds, and thank you for this. This is my number one priority this session, as we put forth our top 3 priorities. And it's really important policy. It's a policy decision the state made many, many, many years ago. And we just need to continue, because being at the end of the energy pipeline, Rhode Island can only keep energy costs down by more renewables and more energy efficiency. No one is going to stand up in any chamber and say, let's build a gas power plant in our district so we can reduce energy costs for Rhode Island. So this is really important policy, and I just want to thank you for advocating for it, and anything we can do to get it over the finish line. I'm working as hard as I can with my colleagues in the House and certainly the Senate, and hopefully we move this important issue forward, because at the end of the day, we have to say, how are we going to leave the planet to our children and our children's children? And this is all part of it. So thank you, Erica.
Right. Thank you, Representative. And with that, I will pass it over to Kai Salem, who is going to give us a very in-depth presentation on how the Renewable Energy Standard works, what it is, and what updating it would look like.
Just going to share my screen so we can all have some slides to look at. I think that makes it so much easier. All right, let's get started. Great to see you all this morning. This is one of my favorite policies to talk about because, as others have stated, this is such a clear win for Rhode Island. We get to be a leader in the country on getting to 100% renewable energy, setting an example, but we also have some unique energy resources here in Rhode Island, especially offshore wind that we're looking at right now, that is going to make this possible and affordable for Rhode Islanders. So let's jump into things. Our goal as a coalition is to meet climate goals in a cost-effective way that is good for Rhode Island workers and our economy. And at the heart of the Renewable Energy Standard policy is a clear and transparent accounting system for all of this renewable energy that we want to bring online. So that's going to be a theme today, is that this policy alone will not get us to that 100% goal, but it is the most important thing that we can do to get there. Or that I should say, it's not the policy that's going to get us off fossil fuels, but it's the most important thing we can do. And it's goal setting, it's making sure that we have transparent accounting, there's no double counting of renewable energy. We know where the renewable energy is, and we know that we can take credit for it here in Rhode Island. Our goal is not, and this is important for our labor allies especially, it's not to force all fossil fuel plants to shut down by 2030. Our goal is not to hurt the economy or to hurt workers. It's just to accelerate this transition and make it a smooth landing pad that has money in it for Rhode Islanders and jobs in it for Rhode Islanders. So the Renewable Energy Standard, thank you so much, Chair Ruggiero, for sponsoring this bill. I actually don't think I updated this from last year, so those numbers are not correct, but of course it's H7277 in the House. This bill would update the Renewable Energy Standard to reach 100% by 2030. This graphic is updated from the Brattle 100% report that the Office of Energy Resources put out back at the end of 2020. So this graphic, I think, is a good place to start because it shows us where our current renewable energy standard is and where we need to get. So I'm just going to draw on my slide here. Hopefully you can see this red line that's going across. This is our current renewable energy standard. We've had this policy since 2004. We were one of the first states to have a renewable energy standard, and it has been very successful in getting us from 0% renewable energy to about 20% today. Although that took place over the course of 16 years, I think we can agree that because of the acceleration of this market and offshore wind, we can get to 100% a whole lot faster. We do have a path to 100%. That's this orange line. This is actually not accurate to what's in the bill. This was drafted, this slide was created before the bill was created. So the bill, I'm going to draw a third red line here. The bill actually ups our renewable energy standard in a way that looks more like this, that curved line. And that's because we know it will be easier to bring more renewable energy online towards the later half of this decade. Again, when the offshore wind industry has really taken off. Now I'd like to draw your attention to the bars on this graph. This shows that the two key components of getting to this goal will be Revolution Wind. Revolution Wind has not yet been built, and thank you to the Ørsted employees who are on the phone with us, but it is contracted, it is coming, it is flying through the permitting process, and it's going to bring a ton of green jobs to Rhode Island. The second important piece of getting to this goal is the 600 megawatt wind project. This project was originally kicked off by Governor Raimondo in fall 2020. It has been on hiatus because there was a gubernatorial transition and the utility company sale, but currently pending legislation, which we really support, that the governor introduced, would make sure that this RFP happens by the end of the summer, and we'll make sure that we can meet our 100% goal. All right, let's get all those drawings out of there and move on to how the Renewable Energy Standard works. So to back up and talk a little bit about our electric grid. Here in New England, we are all in one electric grid, and that's, of course, up here in the top right corner, ISO New England. And that means that because we are in an interconnected electric grid here in New England, when we turn on our lights here in Rhode Island, we don't know if our electricity is coming from our neighbor's solar panels down the road, that they had extra solar electricity that is powering our house. It could be coming from wind turbines in Maine. It could be coming from a natural gas plant in New Hampshire, a natural gas plant here in Rhode Island. There's no way to track electrons once they go onto the grid. That makes it really hard when we are trying to track and account for the renewable energy that we're using here in Rhode Island. And that is why the Renewable Energy Standard was created. At its core, the Renewable Energy Standard is a way of tracking the renewable electricity that we are producing here in Rhode Island, as well as the renewable electricity that we are consuming, that we are buying here in Rhode Island. And the tracking mechanism is called Renewable Energy Certificates, or RECs for short. I love this graphic because it explains a little bit more how RECs work. So here's our grid at the center. All of those electrons are floating around. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know where they're going. Here we have a wind turbine. Let's just say, for the purpose of our conversation, that it is one of our deep water wind turbines. So it's an offshore wind turbine. It spins and it creates 1 megawatt hour of electricity. So here we have that electron going onto that grid, that 1 megawatt hour of electricity. Again, we don't know where it's going. It also creates 1 megawatt hours worth of a renewable energy certificate. Every REC is equal to 1 megawatt hour of electricity. These RECs are tracked in a database by ISO New England. Again, ISO New England is our regional grid operator. It's a nonprofit entity that makes sure that our grid is running reliably and smoothly. And in order for a consumer, a utility company, a government, whoever it is, for that utility company usually to take credit for buying and consuming renewable energy, it has to buy an amount of renewable energy certificates that matches the electricity that it's using. So here we have a house representing that. That house used 1 megawatt hour of electricity, and it wanted to take credit for having renewable electricity. So it also bought and retired a renewable energy certificate It took it out of the database. That REC does not exist anymore. No one else can take credit for the renewable electricity that was produced by that wind turbine. That is essentially what the Renewable Energy Standard asks our utilities to do. So the Renewable Energy Standard requires that all of the electric suppliers in the state have to buy and retire an amount of RECs that matches 20% of the electricity that they are delivering in that given year. That, of course, that 20% increases every year, and the bill that we're talking about today, 100% by 2030, would increase it more rapidly over time to reach that 100% goal. So this graphic I took from last year's Renewable Energy Standard Compliance Report, which the Public Utilities Commission puts together. I have a couple other slides later that have the more updated version of this compliance report. And it shows that we are currently at, I guess this was back in 2019. So by 2022 rather, we're at 20% for the Rhode Island Renewable Energy Standard and where it's going. One thing I thought was interesting, in 2020, this is the sources that Rhode Island electric suppliers were getting their renewable energy certificates from. You can see that wind is a huge driver of our renewable energy capacity. Solar, hydro, biomass, landfill gas, these are also options. As offshore wind, grows the amount of wind that's available to Rhode Island and the region exponentially, we're going to see a lot bigger share of our RECs coming from wind. Again, to take us back to this slide about how we meet this goal, you will see that there is a gap from the 600 megawatt wind RFP to the total 100%. This gap is not, it's not huge, but it's also not inconsequential. The good news is that we know that a lot more is going to happen between now and 2030. There's going to be a lot more solar built. This graphic doesn't include any additional solar or any additional wind projects. We believe that we can absolutely make up that gap through just one more additional wind project, which is in line with what other states are doing throughout the region. I also wanted to mention that there is currently a surplus of RECs. This slide is really confusing. There's a lot of words, so I'm just going to break it down a little bit. The important part here is the bar on the left. This is, there is the option in the Renewable Energy Standard for if there are too many renewable energy certificates, which there are usually because we have more renewable energy than utility companies are required to buy. Companies have the option to bank a renewable energy certificate for using in future years. So that's this pink bar right here. Fully 23% of the renewable energy certificates in 2020 were banked for future use. And, ideally supply would meet demand, and to have a steady market, you wouldn't have that much banking. And this is just a sign that we have a lot of renewable energy and we should be increasing the RES to keep the market a little bit more steady and keep a driving upward pressure on our renewable energy market. How will electric suppliers meet this higher renewable energy standard? And I want to emphasize that this is affordable. So the question is, how will electric suppliers meet the higher RES in a way that is affordable? First, we can use up that REC surplus. If we bank less RECs, we have the renewable energy, let's use them now. Second, entering long-term contracts with offshore wind. This is the single biggest driver in cheap renewable electricity. And there's lots of policies available to legislators, other policymakers to make sure that we can get cheap offshore wind. So when we think about affordably meeting the renewable energy standard, what we really have to think about is making sure that there's competition in these big offshore wind procurements, and making sure that we're delivering this electricity to Rhode Islanders as soon as possible. As I mentioned, other policies can fill the gap. We support revamping solar incentive programs. Energy efficiency is always a great way to deliver renewable electricity at less than the cost of supply. I think I've already made all these points very clear, but the Renewable Energy Standard has been working since 2004. Most states in the country have one of these. We know it works. Renewable electricity is cleaner and better for the Rhode Island economy. We spend billions of dollars on fossil fuel energy, and all of that money goes out of state. Climate Jobs makes this point better than anyone else, but we just shouldn't be relying on foreign oil imports, foreign natural gas, or natural gas from other regions to supply our electricity anymore. Let's bring our electric supply here so we know that it's reliable and we know that it's delivering economic benefits to Rhode Island. This is a hugely important way to meet our Act on Climate goal. If we pass this policy, we can be finally confident that we will meet our 2030 Act on Climate goal. The most recent emissions inventory showed that we're way off track, but this policy will make sure that we are on track. And we have a couple more resources on our website, but I will not spend too much time on that and just see if there's any questions.
All right. Thank you, Kai. What I'll have us do is we'll go on to our next presenters and speakers. And then if anyone has any questions, we'll just hold them for the end to ask them together as well. All right. Thank you very much, Kai. It's always, I feel like I learn something new every time you give that presentation. I think it's maybe my second or third time hearing it now, and I, again, have learned more. So thank you. And now I want to pass it over to David Ortiz and Stacy Tingley from Ørsted, who are going to be able to give a little bit of more of a perspective on the industry as well. And Kai, I will just, I'm not sure exactly how to have you stop sharing your screen. There we go.
Hi, thanks, Erica. Kai, I have to say that might have been the best explanation of the Renewable Energy Standard and how RECs work. We need to connect offline so I can kind of maybe steal some of your talking points. That was pretty awesome. Thank you to Climate Jobs and everyone here for giving us, for organizing this and giving us an opportunity to speak today. I'll give some background on Ørsted and our projects. And David, just feel free to step in anytime. We can kind of tag team this one.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to say hello and thank you for the invitation to be here. Happy to join. Stacy's going to play point, but I'm happy to join the conversation as needed.
Great. So the Ørsted vision is a world that runs entirely on green energy. We've been leading in the industry since we built the first offshore wind farm in Denmark in the early 90s. Here in the US, Ørsted operates the Block Island Wind Farm, which is America's first offshore wind farm. And we also constructed the 2-turbine Coastal Virginia offshore wind pilot project, which are the first 2 offshore wind turbines to be installed in federal waters. We have over 4,000 megawatts of additional capacity through 6 projects in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. Our offshore North American business is jointly headquartered in Boston and Providence, and we employ over 250 people now. So we have a partnership with Eversource Energy in the Northeast. Eversource is one of the leading utilities in New England. They have millions of customers in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. And we've got 3 projects currently under development with the JV. We have the South Fork Wind Farm serving Long Island, Sunrise Wind, which serves New York, and Revolution Wind for Rhode Island and Connecticut. We're really fortunate here in Rhode Island to have such strong champions for offshore wind and renewable energy in general. You know, it takes some real vision and leadership to be the first, and Rhode Island stepped up to the plate. It's home to America's first offshore wind farm. The state approved the procurement of 400 megawatts of the Revolution Wind project, and you know, we're thrilled. Governor McKee committed $150 million to combat climate change. He included an offshore wind procurement as part of his legislative package this year and called for the implementation of the 100% renewable energy standard by 2030 in his Rhode Island 2030 plan, which thanks Representative Ruggiero for sponsoring. So, the legislation that we're talking about today will codify that goal. It'll secure the state's position as a national leader in clean energy, and offshore wind will play a big part in helping the state reach that goal. We're super excited to see the legislation that was introduced calling for the procurement of more offshore wind for the state. Of course, we'd like to see that number increased a little bit, maybe to 1,000, 1,200 megawatts, so that the state can fully realize the economies of scale that come with a larger procurement. Like I said, we're grateful to have state leaders who see the environmental and economic benefits that offshore wind can provide. And I want to talk a little bit about the economic benefits. I think folks on the phone or on the call here today are, have the environmental piece covered. So, but I can give a sense of, what we'll see with Revolution Wind specifically. So all told, we expect to invest an estimated $250 million in Rhode Island to support the development and construction of the Revolution Wind project. Our Providence co-headquarters is home to close to, I think we actually just reached over 50 employees in Providence, which, is pretty exciting. When I started with, I came to Ørsted through the acquisition of Deepwater Wind, and I think I was their 6th hire in Rhode Island. So to see the office grow and, we're taking up more floors, it's really thrilling to see. And in Providence, it's sort of turned into a hub for engineering and project management. So we've got a lot of smart people in one place, and just a great team. We also have our innovation hub based right at the Providence CIC. So that's where our innovation team is based, and they're leveraging the entire US innovation ecosystem to support our global portfolio. So they're working with startups and, innovators to, use these technologies to plug in like actual need that we're facing globally. So that's really another exciting thing that's happening right in Rhode Island. I'm not sure if you guys have made it out to Provport, but we completed construction on our advanced foundation component manufacturing facility. Rhode Island's own Demio Construction built the site using several Rhode Island-based companies, Rhode Island workers. That work was conducted under a PLA with the building trades. Fabrication for the foundation components will start this summer. Right now, we expect it to start in around mid-July, where we'll see like 100 plus workers on the site daily. That work also will be done under a PLA with the building trades. Right now, we've got the fabrication of some crew transfer vessels. A total of 5 will be built in Rhode Island to support our projects in the Northeast. These are highly specialized vessels that we use in the offshore wind industry. They're being fabricated by Blount Boats in Warren and Senesco in Quonset. So that's another really exciting thing. And Blount Boats also built the first crew transfer vessel for in the US, for use in the US with the Block Island Wind Farm. So it's really great to see another Rhode Island company getting even more sort of business, right? Being the first, and now they're doing more. It sounds corny, but it warms my heart a little bit. I'm really proud. So, all of this activity is happening right here in Rhode Island, and that's thanks to the state's vision for a clean energy future. Enactment of this legislation, coupled with another offshore wind procurement, will strengthen the state's commitment to clean energy and the job creation, supply chain development, and economic development benefits that come along with it. So that concludes sort of my remarks here. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or David, if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I mean, from the perspective of a Rhode Islander, this legislation will really, again, put Rhode Island at the forefront of decarbonization and addressing climate change. And, that speaks for itself. And certainly there are folks on the call that, spend every day thinking about and explaining why that's important. But from the industry perspective, from the offshore wind perspective, being the first mover status is a real economic opportunity for a state that has been for decades seeking to transition after the loss of 19th and early 20th century manufacturing to kind of what will drive Rhode Island's economy. And the blue economy, it seems to really hit the mark for our state. We've got a bunch of expertise and other things that we can offer in a increasingly competitive regional and global economy, from boat building to offshore wind energy resources that just play right into what we can do. Ørsted works with, our philosophy is to work in partnership with labor. It just makes all the sense in the world to seize the economic opportunity. We're no longer in Rhode Island out in front. We had the very first with the offshore with Block Island Wind, but I think folks are aware, but if not, up and down the eastern seaboard, states are realizing the massive economic opportunity that comes with these procurements. And that's part of the reason why we think it's important to get above 600 megawatts for the upcoming procurement. That's how you really lock in these investments in manufacturing, in research and development, in job creation for labor, and other states are doing that. And because they're bigger states, their scale is going to be, you're going to see procurements a lot bigger in New York and in Massachusetts. So we think it's vitally important. We think it's a great opportunity for the state of Rhode Island. So not to kind of completely reiterate everything that Stacy said, but just wanted to give that perspective.
Thank you both very much. And now, just before we jump into some questions, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Burke of the Northeast Clean Energy Council to also give some additional industry perspective as well.
Great. Thanks, Erica. And I'll try not to repeat anything that Ørsted said, but we're here on behalf of the industry as well, and providing the industry's perspective, not only from offshore wind, but from solar, and the other renewable technologies that will need to help meet the 100% RES. And just a quick background on who we are. NECEC's mission is to lead the just, equitable, and rapid transition to a clean energy future in a diverse climate economy. And we do so with over 200 members across the clean energy spectrum, from solar and offshore wind to energy storage, clean transportation, energy efficiency. Basically, you name it, we probably have a member that's doing it. And all of these technologies will be needed to meet and maintain a 100% RES. And the industry is excited for and ready to contribute to that 100% RES. It would provide an important signal to the industry that Rhode Island is serious about meeting its climate commitments, and the certainty provided by 100% RES decreases financing costs and improves investor confidence in renewable energy projects in Rhode Island and across the region. The RES is the simplest policy to promote renewable deployment, which means that investors are comfortable with it and understand the value it provides to projects and to residents. Increasing the RES, when combined with strong programs like the Renewable Energy Growth Program, offshore wind procurements, efficiency, will all drive development, providing grid-wide emissions reductions and creating jobs. And the clean energy industry in Rhode Island already supports nearly 14,000 jobs. And that was in 2020, which we all know was a down year. And hopefully the next report will show higher numbers. But we expect this number to continue climbing as we deepen our efforts to decarbonize every sector of the economy. NECEC is a regional organization, and we have experience working on decarbonization across New England and New York. So I can assure you that should Rhode Island adopt a 100% RES, it would become a national leader, but it would not be going it alone. Connecticut and New York have targets or commitments for decarbonized electricity supply by 2040 and Maine by 2050. This would put Rhode Island at the vanguard of a regional coalition of states moving to 100% clean energy. These commitments individually and together are the foundation that create investment from the clean energy industry in the state. And the clean energy industry is well experienced in delivering to meet renewable energy standard commitments here and across the nation. The mechanism is well understood, and the industry is well poised to step up to the task of meeting 100% renewable energy. The state's already made significant progress, as we saw in Kai's presentation, towards this goal in the offshore wind procurements and the state renewable energy programs. And the industry will step up to make sure that the state meets this bold but achievable commitment and ensure Rhode Island is doing all it can to meet its climate commitments. And I'll stop there and make sure we can get to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. And I'm just going to